then we'll just wait for some people, and then we can start. We have a few minutes. It's sunny today.
All right, I just finished reading it.
Okay, cool. And then I think there's also like a document in the chat, like the different kinds of figurative language. You might just want to have a look at that real quick. And the other document, the Word document, is something that was in the assignment, which is something you're going to do after the meeting, okay?
The figurative language and poetry PDF.
That's the one, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, like Ches, the simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and alliteration. Okay.
Exactly, the different types, yeah. That's what we're going to look at in the poem today.
Okay.
All right, I'm just going to invite some people so we can start on time. Lewis, Destiny, Chanel. Hi everybody, I'm just inviting some people. Thank you for coming. We'll get started in a few minutes. If you haven't had a chance to read the poem yet, it's in the chat, the PDF, Still I Rise, Poem B, if you want to just start reading the poem, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Okay, hi Raihan, how you doing? Yeah, if you just want to write present as well, so I know you're here, so you can get a grade for this. Where's Rashid? Is Rashid in here? Hi Anthony, hi Diamond, how you doing? Maybe I should start by saying, just remember that next Tuesday, which is March 9th, is the last day of the marking period. They moved up the marking period. It used to be next Friday. Now they moved it up to Tuesday. So that's maybe a little bit more difficult for you guys because you have less time to do the assignments. But if you're really behind, just doing like 3 assignments is probably going to be enough to pass. Okay, so choose the 3 that you want to do. Okay, and then if you have time to do other ones, then that's great. But at least do 3, and that's probably going to be enough to get you passing. Okay. Any questions on any of the assignments so far? All right. Okay, so we got a few people here, so maybe we'll get started. How many do we have? Yeah, we got 17. Beautiful. So let me just share my screen. So I hope some of you had the chance to read the poem, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Hopefully you can all see my screen now as well. The poem's actually in the chat. It's called Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. And the purpose of these lessons is really just to talk about the poem, okay? We don't really have to even get into like specifics about types of figurative language or whatever. Even just saying whether you like the poem or not counts as participation, right? It's just having a discussion about a poem, and this is kind of, I think, an interesting poem. So if you haven't done so already, if you could maybe read the poem. As I said, it's in the chat if you scroll up. And then maybe also look at the document that says figurative language in poetry, to look at the different types of figurative language like similes, metaphors, personification that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. And then there's also a Word document called Still I Rise pre-discussion notes. And that's really something you're going to complete after the assignment. If you've already done it, that's great. This is just really just designed for you to have something to say when we did the meeting. Okay, so I'm going to give us 5 minutes maybe to give you a chance to read the poem. While you're doing that, I'm actually going to play Maya Angelou, the poet, reading the poem. And in the beginning, she also talks a little bit about the poem as well. So that should give you an idea about what the poem is about a little bit. This is her reading the poem. The poem that she reads is a little bit different to the poem as you have it written in the document. It's a little different, okay? She just changed some of the lines. But I think it's good to get an idea about what the poem's about, just because she has a very particular way of speaking. So let's listen to it now.
Everyone in the world has gone to bed one night or another with fear or pain or loss or disappointment. And yet each of us has awakened, arisen, somehow made our ablution, seen other human beings, and said, "Morning, how are you? Fine, thanks, and you." It's amazing. Wherever that abides in the human being, there is the nobleness of the human being. Despite it all, black and white, Asian, Spanish, Native American, pretty, plain, thin, fat, vowed or celibate, we rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room, just like suns and like moons, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high. Still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh. As if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your lies. You can kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I'll rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh, does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, naturally, there I go rising.
All right, so that was Maya Angelou reading a little bit different to the version you have, but she has this amazing voice, I think, when she reads her poems. Okay, so, oops, I want to start there. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen. I just want to go through different types of figurative language before we get started talking about the poem, and that's maybe something that we can talk about as well. So if you remember, a simile is where you use like or as to describe two things. A metaphor, you don't use like or as. Personification is where we give human traits to an object or an animal, right? The car grumbled. Well, cars aren't humans, they can't grumble, right? So that's personification. Hyperbole, which is where you exaggerate, you make it seem bigger or greater than it is. And lastly, alliteration, which is where you have words close to each other with the same sound. She sells seashells by the seashore, right? That repetition of the S letter and sound. Okay, so just a little bit about Maya Angelou as well. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of her. She died a few years ago. She was a poet. She was also a civil rights activist. If you remember, we read that poem by Amanda Gorman when she read for the President Biden's inauguration. So interestingly, Maya Angelou also read an inauguration poem for Bill Clinton. That was about 20 years ago. So some similarities there. This poem that we're going to look at today is not that poem. It's one of her most famous poems called "Still I Rise," and she's very much concerned with, the struggles of African Americans, as well as defending Black culture, being proud of being Black as well. I think it comes across in her poems, and this was one of her favorites. And she used to read it a lot, but also think about it to get her through tough times she was having personally. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is we did these before. I know some of you maybe didn't come to the last meeting I had on the last poem, but just some general rules. I want everyone to try and participate. Participate can be speaking, so just unmuting yourself and speaking, or you could just write in the chat if you have something to say. Listen closely to what other people are saying. If you want to speak, just wait till someone has finished speaking first. If you're going to talk about the text, which we are, right, refer to the text. The text will have line numbers in it, so you can say, oh, this line, she says this, and then talk about that. Talk to each other. You don't have to talk to me. If you have a question, you can also ask a question of someone else. And lastly, just to respect everybody's point of view, even if you don't agree with it. All right, so let's get started. Oops. All right, so I've actually broken the poem up into two halves just so we can see the first half of the poem on the screen there. Okay, so this is up to line 20. So I've written on the right-hand side some questions that we may want to start to get us thinking about how to start thinking about this poem. So whenever anyone wants to come in and talk, these are maybe some things that you want to talk about, a line that interests you or stands out, or an image. Any questions you have about the poem? What do you think the poem is about in general terms, or what the title means? Who is the poem addressed to? Right? It talks about you in that first line. Who is that you? And then lastly, what are some examples of figurative language that you notice in the poem? Metaphors, similes, personification. So whenever anybody wants to start, let's start.
I think the poem is about like that the narrator is saying that they will rise from everything, even if they pass on, that they'll still live. Like they can't be, like nothing will weigh them down.
Yeah, very, very good point, Marcus. And in the poem, what's weighing her down?
Um,
specifically, maybe? What's her problem? What's she fighting against?
she is like fighting against. Well, I don't really know, but like I think what's weighing her down is how like people see her. Like they just see her and want to, they just want to bring her down.
Yeah. So maybe let's look at those first four lines, right? The first four lines, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. And as Marcus was saying, she's going to keep going. She's going to rise up despite these people trying to keep her down. But maybe we want to think about, who are these people? Who is the you in this? Any ideas, anyone? Michael, did you want to say something? No? Well, okay, thank you, Raihan. She's fighting against the racist people who are mean and unfair to her. Yeah, very much so, right? She's a black poet, black civil rights activist, and I think this poem is very much directed at definitely racists, and also in general, maybe even just white people, right? People who are mean, who tell lies about her, line 2, right? They want to keep her down, right? So I think that's, Raihan, you're absolutely right there. That's what she's fighting against. Did anyone notice any examples of figurative language in the poem? You can write in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself.
Like simile.
Yeah, where do you see a simile?
On the fourth line.
Yes, still like dust, hard rise. So remember, a simile is where we compare two things, right? So what are the two things being compared in that example? Still like dust, I'll rise.
The dust and herself.
Yeah, she's comparing herself to dust. Now, why is she doing that? Any idea?
Because she's telling the people who are being racist to her that no matter what they say or what they'll do, that she will always rise up.
Exactly. And, just like, dust rises up, right? And that's something that always happens. Maybe what she's saying here is that, this is what I'm going to be like. I'm always going to rise up. It's not like sometimes I'm going to do it, but it's just inevitable that that's how I'm going to be. Raihan, you mentioned line 9, just like moons and like suns. And it continues with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. So again, very similar, right? She's using this simile, comparing herself to the moon and to the sun. And we know that the sun comes up every day, right? And we see the moon normally every evening. And we have tides that we see on the ocean or the sea. So just like these things always happen, right? So in the same way, she's going to rise up against people who are trying to keep her down. I want to talk about maybe this image on lines 7 and 8, because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. What does she mean? What does she mean by that? Or what's she trying to say, maybe? let's look at maybe a picture of an oil well. So I don't know if anyone knows what an oil well looks like. I've got it on the screen here. Now this thing in the middle here is what's called a derrick. I'll put that in the chat, D-E-R-I-C-K, okay? And a derrick is something that they use to get the oil out of the ground. And what it does is it just keeps like going up and down, and pumping the oil out of the ground. All right? And we don't really have these oil wells in New York, and they're more in like places like Texas. So when she says, because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room, what kind of image do we get about her there? Any ideas? Well, first of all, what color is, yes, thank you, Raihan. It means she walks with lots of confidence, right? So she's walking with confidence. Also, what color is oil?
Brown.
Brown or what?
Black.
Brown or black, right? And so it's not just incidental or a coincidence that she's talking about oil wells, right? The fact is oil is black and she's black, right? So if she's describing herself as like walking like oil wells pumping, Raihan says yes, it means that she's walking with confidence. But what does oil also symbolize? What do we think of when we talk about oil?
Separation.
Sorry, Simone, say again.
Separation.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't even think of that, but that's a very good point. Yeah, separation. The one thing I was thinking about maybe is that oil is like a symbol of being rich, wealth. Yeah, power maybe. You think about this derrick, right? This thing that's pumping the oil out of the ground. It's like going up and down, right? And it keeps on doing that. So then maybe this is a symbol of strength. So given all that, what's she trying to say about herself, maybe? She's comparing herself to this oil well, this derrick. Any ideas?
What was the question again?
I was just saying, if she's comparing herself to this oil well that is a symbol of like wealth and power, what is she trying to say about herself at the same time?
That she yeah, she has power. Like she is really like she stays optimistic about everything.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, because like she probably has like people say like a lot of things to her, but regardless of what they say, she still says that she has power and that she'll rise and that they'll never like truly bother her.
Exactly, yeah. They won't be able to get to her, right? Because she just has this confidence that's just inside her, and she's powerful and rich, and they don't really want her to be powerful, right? If we look at, I think it's line 13 to 16, I got on the screen there. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Isn't she saying that, you know, you want to see me weak, but actually I'm going to be like an oil well. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to be rich. And then if we look at the example a little bit further on, right, she says, because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. What do we think of when we think of gold? What is gold a symbol of?
Wealthiness.
Well,
Wealth, right? Wealth, power, strength, again, a little bit like oil. Yeah. So these symbols that she uses in these similes, like a gold mine, like an oil well, right? She's trying to say that she's going to be strong. You know, you want to paint a picture of me as being weak to you, that trodden down. But she's saying that I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to every time you kick me, right, I'm going to rise up. Maybe let's look at the second half of the poem. We've got about 5 minutes left. So you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Anybody spot any figurative language in this section? We had a lot of similes before, right? Where she's comparing herself to something else. I'm like this. But in this second section, maybe we get some different kinds of figurative language. Does anybody spot anything?
the first four stanzas.
Yes. This one, the ones can you see my
So
screen?
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, she's talking about how they look at her like intriguing, and they like taunt her and do all of these things, but she doesn't let it affect her or bother her. She's still gonna rise. And when I say they, I think she's talking about like the white people or the people that look down upon her and wish bad on her and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. And where she says, you may shoot me with your words, what kind of figurative language is that?
Um, for oh my gosh,
A metaphor.
Definitely a metaphor. I think there's actually three that we could actually say.
hyperbole.
Hyperbole, right? Good. And there's another one I was thinking of. Hyperbole, metaphor, and I was thinking of one other one.
Personification.
Beautiful, yes. Personification, right? Because you can't actually shoot
Can't
someone.
actually shoot somebody with words. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't shoot someone with words. So that's giving human traits to something, right? So that's also personification. Yeah. So just that one line, we've got a metaphor. It's kind of a metaphor. She's kind of symbolizing a gun without saying it's a gun. We've got personification because she's giving human traits to something that's not human. And then also we get hyperbole because whoever's doing this shooting is not actually shooting her with words, right? She's exaggerating. So we get three different types of figurative language. And actually, in those other two lines, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness. We get the same kind of thing. Yes, Raihan, actually, you're right, they are metaphors. There's also, in that second stanza on the page, there's another metaphor. Does anyone spot it?
I am a black ocean because it's a
I'm a-
comparison, but she doesn't use Zacharias.
Right, good. I'm a black ocean, right? What does she mean by that? I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Why is she comparing herself to an ocean? Any ideas? What do we think about when we think about oceans?
I think like for her, like her in her opinion, that the ocean means to her that is like probably that she's free. That
Absolutely. Yeah, Marcus, did you want to say something else?
also like yes oh no, that's it.
No, you're absolutely right, I think, right? She's free. And also maybe, again, when we think of an ocean, I think of like strength, right? You get those strong waves. So I think ocean, as well as the oil wells and the gold mines, right? It's a symbol of power, right? It's a powerful force in nature. So when she says, "I'm a black ocean," right? Again, it's no coincidence that she's using that word black because she's a black person, right? So I'm a black ocean. She's trying to say, I'm powerful. I'm like almost like a force of nature here, right? You want to make me weak. You want to keep me down, but actually I'm strong, right? So it's almost like she's trying to rewrite how people see her. I think, Marcus, she said that earlier, very much so. Right, I think we have a couple minutes left. Is there anything that anybody else wanted to mention? Maybe if you haven't spoken yet and you didn't get a chance to say anything, if you want to maybe write in the chat or to come off mute and say something, now would be the time. Okay, so just before we go, I made like a little mini assignment here, right? It's called Socratic Seminar, Still I Rise. You'll see it in your assignments. This is actually going to be the last assignment for this marking period, okay? I put on it that it's due tomorrow, but as long as you hand it in to me by Tuesday. Now, on the assignment, it's really talking about a lot of the things that we've been talking about in this seminar, okay? So as long as you were listening, you should be fine with doing the assignment, okay? Talking about the different types of figurative language. Do I have any more questions or anything anybody wants to say before we go? Okay, thank you everybody for coming. Have a good weekend. If you're behind on your work, please try and catch up by Tuesday so I don't have to chase you up next week. And take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye, everybody.